everyone. I am so excited that today I have the opportunity to be speaking with Carly. And Carly is a special guest on this show because not only is she here in a professional capacity, but as a parent, she will also be speaking about parenting and the journey that they went on to become parents in their families. So we'll start with professional first. Welcome, Carly. Tell us about your professional role.
Thank you so much for having me join you. So I am a registered nurse, a certified breastfeeding specialist, and a sleep coach. And yeah, I work with families, new and expecting parents, to support them through their journeys through pregnancy and all the way through a lot of the challenging milestones of early parenthood, right up into potty training.
Excellent, excellent. How does your work specifically help those in the 2S LGBTQIA plus community grow their respective families?
Um, So I don't work necessarily with families in terms of like conception. Most of the families that I work with, I'm working with usually in the later stages of pregnancy. Some I work with in early stages of pregnancy, for example, families that are wanting some support around inducing lactation. That's some of the families that I work with in the really early stages um, of growing their family. And yeah, and then I think otherwise, I generally support 2S LGBTQ families the same way, but with um, that I do with all families in terms of just really trying to meet their own needs and help make their parenting journey a little bit easier.
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Are there things that you might look for in the work that you do? And not just as a lactation consultant, but you said you also do some sleep work as well. And I would like to pick your brain just a little bit about that in just a moment. But in the work that you do as a 2S LGBTQIA plus identifying individual, that your heterosexual peers working in a similar capacity simply may not look for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this happens all the time when I'm connecting with two other 2S LGBTQ people, that those conversations feel different than when I'm connecting with families that are identifying as cis and hetero. There's a deeper, more nuanced conversation that can happen around what family looks like, and
Mhm.
there's a lot less sort of having to explain who we are and how we relate to each other. That things just sort of flow more naturally. And that I think some things that I automatically do that I don't necessarily see some of my other colleagues doing is that, um, I don't automatically assume that a birthing person's partner is their husband. I don't use that word husband unless they have already used that term. And so there's a lot of, I think, assumptions that happen in around birth and working with new parents um, that I wouldn't make because that's not the world that I live in.
Mhm.
And so what comes naturally to me is to use the language that I use every day in my life.
That makes sense. That makes good sense. I want to ask just a little bit about sleep because I have spoken with other people as I've been going through the process of preparing for this show. And I wonder if you could just, for just a moment, briefly delve into and respecting completely that it is a huge topic and there are a variety of different ways to approach sleep work. But as someone who does sleep work with families, can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? And if someone was looking for some sleep support, how that typically unfolds and what they might be getting and what they may want to watch out for, like good and bad.
Right. So I guess the first thing I would say is that there's a lot of noise about sleep, and sleep is a really challenging part of early parenthood. And so I want to say that you do not have to sleep train your baby. There is a lot of noise around that, and there's lots of different ways of getting more sleep in our lives without necessarily sleep training. And families I work with, it's not a one size fits all solution, and I would apply that to all the work I do. I think that one part that sets me apart from other sleep consultants is that infant feeding is a huge passion of mine, and it's the first thing I look at, especially with our really young babies. Often, if there's some challenges with sleep, the first thing we really need to dive into is how is feeding going? Because if there are feeding challenges, babies are going to have a harder time sleeping, and so that's a big piece. And so I like to take a really um, big full assessment as a nurse that I want to be very thorough on that before we make any plan to move forward, ensure that feeding is going well, that baby is developing appropriately. And then I also work with families, to find some solutions that fit with their parenting style. And that a lot of families that I've worked with have not sleep trained. We work on some other things. Maybe sometimes that looks like changing sleep association. So if what they've been doing is just no longer working for them, then we find something that does, and where babies still feel supported and where everybody's getting enough sleep. And other things I look at are, what does the sleep environment look like, um, and based on baby's temperament and where they're at developmentally, how much sleep do they need in the day? Are they getting too much? Are they not getting enough? Is there something happening with the schedule that is affecting the way that nights are going? And so taking a really big look at all of the different moving pieces. It can be quite a puzzle to figure out what's
For
going
sure.
on with some babies that are having challenges with sleep. And yeah, and the other piece I would say is to build that support network for yourself, that we know that especially in those newborn days that sleep will be challenging. And so making sure that there's other folks in your life that can help fill your cup, make that a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Because as I say, I've had other people mentioning that they would like more information. They'd like to know more about the sleep part of it as well as the feeding part, and just sort of babies on the outside. Now what do we do with it all the way around, right? And it sounds
Mhm.
like you kind of got two of the primary bases covered there, with helping with sleep and helping with eating, that which is a great resource. Are you able to offer the lactation services and the sleep services um, on a broad spectrum? So if you have somebody, say in Sudbury, because you don't live in the GTA, but do you have, what if somebody down here or in Sudbury or something wanted to work with you? Are you able to offer those services virtually?
Yeah, so I have worked with families virtually. I would say that in terms of feeding and lactation, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging, but I definitely have some tools to be able to do that virtually. I am part of a network. I'm part of a larger brand called the Mama Coach, and so there are other mama coaches. So if I feel like that the mama coach that's closer to somebody, I might also offer that referral. But I'm also happy to see people virtually that way too.
Excellent. So how did they get in touch with you then? Can you tell us a little bit about your contact information so that they can put you on speed dial?
Yeah. I would say the best way to find me is probably Instagram. That's where I'm the most active on social media. And I have a lot of free resources there too, in terms of
Oh, good.
infant feeding. And I post pretty regularly with lots of free information. So that's a really good place to find me. My Instagram handle is Carly, CARLY the Mama Coach. And from there, it's pretty easy to find my email and website. But I'm happy to also take direct emails. So um, yeah, it can be emailed, or I mean, you can also send me a text message or a phone call. So I'll throw my phone number out there too, and that's 807-355-4099.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
I know
So
not everybody's on social media anyway.
no, it's true. You're absolutely right. And especially when you have a wee baby, that you may not have as much time to scroll through. Although when you're up at 3 in the morning, maybe you don't have much else to do. You're feeding a baby, got a free hand.
That's
Um,
right.
let's make a switch in our conversation. What can you tell us about the members of your family?
Yeah, so it's myself and my wife, JL, and we have a little one that just turned 18 months old. So still sort of in that newish parenting journey ourselves.
Right, absolutely. And of the various methods of creating a family that are available to us LGBTQIA plus community, can you tell us which method you and your family chose to use?
So we used IUI or intrauterine insemination with an anonymous donor. We had a known donor in mind. We talked about it for a long time, and eventually we settled on using an anonymous donor.
It's a big conversation, and I mean, certainly anyone in our community who is intentionally creating a family is going to give time and thought to that part of the equation as well, whether it's um, a couple that has a uterus and an egg but doesn't have sperm, or a couple that has sperm but doesn't have a uterus and an egg. So it's not something that's lightly decided upon, and it is certainly a conversation that couples need to have, or individuals need to spend time thinking about. If you're not doing this as a couple, you're doing it as an individual, right? But I think that it's something that probably our cisgendered heterosexual peers don't necessarily think about the same way. We have to figure out how we're going to make this happen, right?
Mhm. I've certainly done a lot of educating with my colleagues at the hospital. Many questions.
No doubt, no doubt. Given that achieving parenthood for members of our community is not easy and it's never free, or almost never free, are you comfortable divulging to us a little bit about some of the costs that you incurred?
Yeah, it is quite expensive, especially if you're um, going through um, purchasing sperm, for example, or even more expensive for folks that go down a different route with IVF, which we fortunately didn't need to pursue. But um, yeah, it was over $5,000 with all of the expenses, and a lot of our expenses were fortunately covered by OHIP.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a gift that we have here in some respects that some places don't have. That's true.
Mhm.
Yes, it's something that has to be budgeted for, right? And we don't think about that necessarily when we're children, thinking about someday having a family. Oh, and we're going to have to budget for just making it start.
Mhm.
Forget college. We just have to get the child first, right? It's something to take into consideration. Understanding that there is bias at play because you've agreed to be here on this show and be a participant that I'm interviewing. So you must see some merit in it. When you were on your own journey to becoming parents, would if there was a show like this that existed, would you feel like that would have been beneficial to you? And if so, what kinds of things would you have been hoping to see?
Yeah, I think it definitely would have been very beneficial. Looking back on my own journey to conception and early parenthood, I think I could have benefited from more counseling around donor selection. Um,
Mhm.
that would have been really helpful. And yeah, and then I think like what I see for myself and in families that I work with as well is there's a lot of preparation for birth and not always as much for you know how you're going to manage in that those first few months with your newborn at home, taking care of a baby, what that looks like, feeding, all of those things.
Mhm, mhm. It's true. It's true. And I hope I've ticked some boxes for those who are joining us for this show, that you're having the opportunity to learn some of those kinds of things through the conversations that I'm having. Let's finish all of this on a positive note. Let's say, what is your absolute favorite part of parenting?
I find it absolutely fascinating and wondrous to watch my little one just discovering the world every day. His total amazement at things that are benign, things that I take for granted in the world, that I walk past without really noticing. And he's absolutely amazed by, and just watching him learn and grow the new words that are coming every day now. I find that so exciting.
It is. It is it's amazing to see the world through their eyes, isn't it?
Mhm.
It humbles us and it slows us down sometimes in a way that we just need them to do that for us.
Yeah.
Carly, it has been truly wonderful having the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to making sure that I make connections for you so that everyone who's watching has an opportunity to learn from what you have to share.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night.